a coaching and leadership development organization dedicated to supporting employees and their managers through one of the most complex work-life transitions, parental leave. With over 20 years of leadership experience, Arianna has held executive roles in human resources, operations, and consulting, specializing in workplace support for parents. In addition to parental leave coaching, Arianna helps companies launch and revitalize employee resource groups and provide virtual and in-person training. As a certified RETAIN Parental Leave Coach, Arianna and her team of certified coaches deliver evidence-based programs that guide parents and managers through every stage of the leave journey while helping employers attract, retain, and engage top talent. Arianna lives in the San Francisco Bay Area with her husband, 3 young children, 2 dogs, and 10 chickens. Arianna, we're so excited to have you.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. And I know everyone's thinking, gosh, 10 chickens, I bet you get a lot of eggs. And we do. And right now, that's really important. Eggs are very expensive.
Good for you. Good for you.
Yeah. Uh,
Before we get started, we'd like to do a couple of polling questions to get to know our audience better. So if we could please get started with that, and if you'll share your responses with us. Let us know if you currently do or do not identify as a parent. We'll give you a few seconds here. All right. Has everyone made a choice, hopefully? Okay, very good. That helps give us some context. We appreciate that. All right, we have one more. Approximately how many employees in your company have taken parental leave in the last year? This gives us a context of size of company and sort of type of workforce that you may have for this conversation. All right, so we've got a lot of small businesses with us today. That's good to know. I'm sure that's helpful for Arianna to understand who our audience is. And then lastly, we have one more. What is the biggest challenge in supporting employees through parental leave? And we're going to ask you to choose one here, which we know may be difficult, but we're going to ask anyway. See if we have any consistency here. Oh, we do. All of the above. Okay. Fair point. And then, of course, everyone's always concerned about team coverage and just making sure that things don't come to a grinding halt because one person on the team isn't going to be available. So thank you all so much for giving us that context. We really appreciate it. You've all gotten to know Arianna a little bit, and now we've all gotten to know you. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to her. Thank you.
yeah. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Lauren. I'm really excited to be here and having this conversation. It's obviously something that's near and dear to my heart. I'm very passionate about it. And I appreciate you taking time out of your very busy day and life to have this conversation. My goal is that you're able to pick up on a few insights here that you're able to implement immediately to make your business better and to make people's lives better. So I know parental leave can be a very challenging time for managers, for the expecting parents, for the team. But what if we looked at parental leave as an opportunity to shine for your leaders, for your organization, to really create loyal, engaged employees by supporting them properly so they feel valued and appreciated? It also differentiates your organization. If you think about it, as people are on the job hunt and they're looking on your careers page, are you talking about being parent friendly? What are some examples of that? If you really nail this, you're able to talk about it, and you're going to have people on Glassdoor also referencing how supported they feel as a working parent. So before we kind of dive into the content, I'd love to share my personal story with you. It goes back to probably one of the most difficult times in my life. I was pregnant and I had just found out that my mother was dying, and she lived with us. I also had recently told my manager that I was expecting. I get back from the hospital, I sit down to my computer, and my Slack messages start pinging and I'm going in and reading all of them, and it's people congratulating me on my pregnancy. But I hadn't told anyone other than my manager, and it turns out he shared my pregnancy news without my permission, without my knowledge, in a meeting that I was not in. I was already dealing with a lot of emotions at that time, but I didn't feel it was appropriate. I feel like he broke trust that I had with him. And I thought, I don't even know if this is legal for him to, mention something like this to people. My pregnancy went on, and as my leave was approaching, I asked him, as I'm getting ready to go out on leave, what should I do to prepare? How am I handing off my work? And he left it to me. He said, you know what needs to be done. These are the people that you should delegate the work to. And so I spent weeks preparing what I thought was the best handoff and transition plan. I think I did a good job, but it would have been really nice if he had some templates that I could use or could guide me through that process, or if HR even had that for me. Now we're getting to the week before my leave starts. I'm very pregnant. My feet hurt, my back hurts, and I'm in a Zoom meeting with my manager, and he says, "Hey, Arianna, so next week's your last week. I need you to work an HR conference at the booth Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday." And I'm thinking, really? I said, "You realize my leave starts on Friday?" He said, "Right. So you're available. I need you to work these 3 days." I look down at my very pregnant belly and I think, I don't have any clothes that are going to fit me right now that are like professional clothes for me to go and be at a conference. And I was also appalled and enraged that he would expect me and my physical condition at that point to be on my feet for 3 days at a booth. And I had my child on Sunday. So that just goes to show where I was in my pregnancy. My leave started. Halfway through my leave, I get a call from the CEO, who was a friend, and he said, "How's it going?" And I was really honest and I shared my experience, and he was shocked. He apologized profusely. And what I realized in that moment was there's really a lack of transparency between executive leadership and what they think the conversations are happening and the reality of it. As I joined mommy and baby groups during my leave, I told my story and I heard other moms share theirs. And we live in California, in the San Francisco Bay Area. Some of the biggest and best companies are here, yet all the moms had some version of a story like mine. And I thought, there's got to be a better way. I don't think this is really how companies want their culture to be. And so it was really put on my heart to change the way parents experience leave and employers support them. And I just want to mention, no matter how many times someone takes a parental leave, it's going to be complex. There's going to be challenges, and it almost gets more complicated each child that they have. And one research study showed from 2024 that 89% of parents feel like their company should do a better job in supporting them in their parental leave experience, and 73% consider leaving their current company. Now, I've had this conversation many times, and I'll hear some leaders say, "Well, I didn't have that support. I survived." The point is not to survive this, but to help your people thrive during this time. And so people are going to continue to have children and they're going to continue to work. So it's really an opportunity for companies to get it right.
It's really interesting, Ariana, how many different types of experiences people can have, but they all sort of lead back to what you said, which is the preparation and the communication and all these things that have to be done in advance to set everyone up for success, the person leaving as well as the people, who are still going to be there. So, tell us about how, you recommend organizations and employees go about planning for that.
Yeah, so there's really 3 stages of leave, and we're going to break each one down. So the 3 stages are preparing for leave, during leave, and returning to work. So the biggest communication gap that we see in the first phase of preparing for leave is how to properly communicate this and what to communicate. So employees and managers seem to be unclear on next steps and planning preparation. So I'm going to tell you a story. We'll call her Emily. Emily had gone through 5 rounds of IVF. These are true stories, by the way. She and her partner were thrilled to finally have a pregnancy get to the point where she could announce to her manager that she was expecting. And her manager's response when she shared the exciting news that she was going to be taking leave was, "Ah, I thought you might be pregnant. You've put on a lot of weight recently." Another quick story, someone announced that they were expecting, and she was very nervous going into this conversation. She wanted to continue with her career progression. She'd invested a lot, and she was nervous that her team was maybe going to be resentful, that her manager was going to question her commitment. And their response was, "Okay, congratulations. When's the first day of your vacation? And you can be honest with me. Do you really think you're going to come back?" Versus what if a manager said, "Oh my gosh, congratulations. We're so excited for you and we're thrilled to support you in this journey. Who have you told? Here are your next steps. How would you like to celebrate this? What feels good for you? Know that you're going to be supported and we can't wait to welcome you back." How do you think those 3 employees felt and went home and had conversations with their significant others about how they felt supported? So it's important to actually train your managers on how to receive the news and also how to communicate. If you need a script on it, that's fine. Give them some guidelines of what's appropriate to say, what's not. And then as HR, obviously, people come and will say, "I'm pregnant," or "My partner is expecting, what next?" And a lot of times it's log into the portal, go to page 19 in the handbook. And because parental leave is really specific and niche, consider having a parental leave resource handbook that specifically communicates all the nuances and the benefits that are available to them. And you want to make sure that whatever you develop, it's going to take some time to really develop a cohesive plan, but make sure that it's repeatable. Each manager can use this with their teams so that everyone feels good going into the leave stage. We provide all of our clients, for example, with a transition action plan. It has different tabs. It communicates all of the active projects that an employee might have that need to be transitioned. There's meetings around this before the transition actually happens. It's also important to put in place, we'll talk about it more in a little bit, but it's called a keep in touch strategy, how to keep in touch with the employee taking leave. You can also identify a return to work buddy, someone that is going to be there to kind of re-onboard them. Oftentimes you'll have an onboarding buddy, have a re-onboarding buddy. And also I would suggest not waiting until the person goes on leave to start transitioning the work. Start doing it early. We recently started working with a new client, and we came into a situation where one of their employees had recently gone on leave. They thought they did a great job preparing the existing team to take over. Parent was on leave, the team's taking over, and it turns out the people they identified to take over really weren't cut out for it. It wasn't their genius zone. Customer service was dropping the survey scores of how people were interacting, and they were scrambling to try and find a solution. Whereas if they would have tested it ahead of time, it would have given them a little bit more runway. They ended up bringing in interim support, temporary support. So that also might be something you need to consider. Depending on who's taking leave, would it really be helpful and not help employees from burnout if you just bring someone in temporarily to assist? And just some things to consider. Everybody's journey to becoming a parent looks different. There's adoption, there's surrogacy, there's IVF, there's birth and non-birth parents. And there's another thing, I don't know if you're aware of this, it's called the PMAD screening. It stands for the perinatal mood and anxiety disorder. And there's a screening questionnaire that's 10 questions that people take. If you've ever had a child, it's what's on the clipboard waiting for you at your 6-week postpartum appointment with your doctor. So perinatal mood and anxiety disorders can actually begin during pregnancy. So looking for ways to support a pregnant expecting parent is also something to consider, and identifying ways that they can be supported. Potentially, if you have an EAP, that might be one of the ways. There's one report from 2023 that showed that half of pregnant women that had depression were never treated. So that's actually one of the reasons why what we do with our clients and their employees is we actually do the PMAD screening at every single meeting that we have before the baby even arrives. So we get a really nice baseline. And just so you know, the PMAD, because we're going to talk about it a little bit more later, it's a scale, it's a rating. So on the low end, low risk, like a 1, 2, or 3. High is a 10. Anything above 10, you kind of want to ring the bell and say, I think you need some additional mental health support.
That's a lot of great information, Ariana, as far as just the planning stage and, the things that organizations and individuals need to think about as they're preparing to go out. It's interesting, the concept of parental leave coverage, which is something that's very typical and mainstream in other countries. The UK, for example, they hire a parental leave cover when somebody goes out. Typically for an extended period of time, but that's not so much part of our culture here in the US, which is something that we all need to adapt to, right? I thought another interesting point that you made is about 73% of new parents consider leaving. And that's a huge impact on the company from a productivity perspective, from a cost perspective, from a morale perspective. You want to talk a little bit about how much it costs to replace an employee when someone comes back, if someone doesn't come back in these circumstances?
Yeah, so SHRM says it's 1.5 to 2 times someone's annual salary. So it's pretty costly, and those are hard and soft costs. So you obviously want to retain people, even though 73% of people consider, not everybody does. But within 18 months of someone returning from leave or taking a leave, that's where I think employees really make a decision of if it's a good fit for them.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
So the next topic we're going to talk about is stage 2, or during leave. And the biggest communication gap that we see here is that employees feel completely cut off or overwhelmed by text messages from all their friends at work checking in and all of that. So I know that with regulations, HR and managers are typically not trying to contact anyone while they're on leave because they don't want to be working, right? But there does need to be some sense of connectivity, and that's where the keep in touch strategy that I mentioned previously really comes into play. So you're already identifying who is a keep in touch buddy, who's going to get the text message of the picture in the news that the baby's here and mommy and baby are safe, and then have permission to then share that with everybody else. Another thing is there might be leadership changes, there might be really exciting things happening at the company, and they want to know that, and that should be okay. They should be able to hear about the exciting news, because to come back to work and be flooded with a bunch of information is like drinking from a fire hose, and they're already going to be handling a lot. So if you can drip information to them, and maybe it's through their keep in touch buddy that you do that, but the parent is going to identify, I prefer text message, I prefer a personal email or a phone call. Oftentimes the parent will want to bring the baby into the office as well and have the baby meet everyone. So find out if these things are important to your people and plan for that. Another thing you should put on the calendar and schedule is a check-in 1 month before the parent is expected back. The reason for that is timelines change. There may have been complications. They may be dealing with some mental health challenges, and they might even have childcare coverage concerns. So checking in with them 1 month ahead of time gives everybody time to adjust to any changes that there might be and see if that timeline is realistic. So moms in general are really good at looking like they're holding it together, even if they're struggling. And I want to share a quick story about one of the moms that actually I was personally coaching. We did the PMAD screening. We talked about that. And it was our first meeting after the baby arrived. She was on leave, and previously her PMAD scores were very low, 1 or 2. This time it was a 10. And if you may remember from what I said before, a 10 is borderline. If it was an 11, I would be sounding the alarm and saying, let's get you some additional mental health resources. So we dug in, and it turned out that she felt very isolated. She went from work where she was busy, she was a manager herself, her calendar was full, she had meetings, she was having adult interactions. And now that she was on leave, everything was about feeding times, nap times, and diapers. That's just the reality of it. But she was missing having that human connection with adults and not just a baby. She was also feeling disconnected from her husband. And she felt like she was giving so much attention to the baby. He was feeling a bit left out. He was going through his own stuff, which is why this kind of support is actually really helpful for dads and non-birthing parents as well. And she was having some anxiety about taking the baby out. And by the way, if you're a parent or you know a parent, maybe some of this is resonating, and you may have experienced or know someone that has experienced these things as they start their leave. So I gave her some homework. First was I sent her a gratitude journal with some prompts of things that she should be doing every day. She made an appointment with her friend to meet at a coffee shop around the corner. So if anything came up with the baby, she was close to home. I asked her to find a friend who was willing to bring her lunch one day. And I gave her the homework assignment of writing a letter to the baby with her husband. So we met 2 weeks later. She had all of these things calendared out, which felt really good for her. It felt like she was regaining control. And we checked in, and she was doing her gratitude journaling. She had met for coffee and lunch with friends. And her husband did write that letter. They loved the exercise so much, they actually decided we want to do this every year. And on her 18th birthday, we're going to give her 18 letters. And I just thought that was so sweet that that homework assignment prompted this tradition. And how wonderful for that baby when the baby turns 18 to have that. So we did the PMAD screening, and it was a 4, everyone, a 4, going from a 10 to a 4 in 2 weeks. So sometimes it's really helpful to have someone communicating with the parent in a supportive way. I know that EAPs can be really helpful. The thing with that is it can be tricky because it has to be employee initiated typically. But maybe that's part of your keep in touch strategy, is as someone is postpartum, you're dripping this information to them, reminding them that they have this resource. So if they feel isolated, if they're feeling this anxiety, they can tap into the resources that you have. And just a note about mental health, the numbers are, staggering, honestly. 1 in 5 moms will experience some form of anxiety or depression. And did you know that non-birthing parents and dads can have it too? It's 1 in 10. And it presents differently in non-birthing parents. The symptoms are different, and it presents later. So if you have a non-birthing parent as an employee and their partner has had a baby, given birth, you might see that 3 to 6 months after the baby is born. So that might be something to be aware of as well.
That's really interesting to be sensitive to non-birthing parents, having postpartum as well. And, we're just starting to get to a place where people are more open about talking about these issues in general. And the birthing parent has to get used to being able to talk about those things and share those things. But now also, how it impacts the non-birthing parent is really important to think about as well. We have another polling question for the audience. If you would share with us, how does your company handle communication with employees on leave? See if we have any consensus here. We did not offer all of the above for this question. Okay, so organizations handle it differently. You want to talk about that a little bit, Arianna, as well?
Yeah, I'm just reading the results here. So please decide which communication we want. Perfect. So it looks like we have a mix here. I think leaving it up to each manager can be challenging because some managers might have a really great process and other managers, let's face it, managers are employees too. They're busy. They may be facing burnout as well. So it might be interesting, depending on how large your organization is, to maybe get together with all the managers and talk about it openly. Have a conversation. This is all about communication. Have a roundtable discussion. How does everyone handle it? And take the good pieces and see if you can put, from an HR perspective, put together a process, a policy around how to handle leave. I think having the designated check-in strategy is key. That's amazing. And also having employees say how much they want to be communicated. I think all of it kind of goes together. It's not one or the other. It's a multifaceted approach that you want to take. All right, so we're going to get into the final section, which is returning to work. So what can happen here is it can get a little messy. There can be lack of clear intentional communication. There may not be an integrated plan on how to welcome and reboard this employee. In fact, 25% of employees return to work and report that their colleagues didn't know it was going to be their first day back. That happened to me. I got back. I was on a team call and everyone's like, oh, she's back. And nice surprise for them. I would have preferred that they knew I was coming back because it obviously impacted the workload and how we were going to be working together. And it shouldn't be a shock. There should even be a way to mark that celebration again in a way that feels good for the employee, because it can be really overwhelming, right? Maybe there's been technology changes. There's people that maybe they're in a different role when they come back. There's new employees that have joined, new processes in place. And so that's also why having that check-in a month ahead of time can be helpful, is so that there can be any changes shared during that time. Also, that return to work buddy, that's where they get to come into play. And I would also make sure that you set a meeting cadence so that the manager and the returning employee have expected check-in times. I would say the first week, it should probably be about 2 meetings at the beginning, maybe their first day back, and maybe 3 to 4 business days later. And then you could slow the cadence down to maybe once a week for a few weeks, and then just ask the employee what feels like a good meeting cadence for them. And there's also something about, I don't know if this is something I made up the term, but a boomerang employee leave. Someone who comes back from parental leave and then needs to go out again on a mental health leave because they're overwhelmed. And so that's something that's real, that does happen. People are just, you know what having a baby is like. Even if you haven't had one, you know people that have had children. It's, you're sleep deprived. There's hormonal changes if you're the birthing parent. There's challenges with illnesses, doctor's appointments, and to juggle all of that and your work and to be truly engaged, sometimes it could just feel a little overwhelming. So just be sure that you're checking in and seeing what additional support they feel like they need that you can support them in. There was one client that we were working with, and she was a manager, and she was an amazing manager, and they had a hybrid work schedule. So one of her employees had recently come back from leave, and she knew that on the days that she was working from home, she really wanted to make sure that she got time with her baby. And so she told her employee, I don't want to see you on Teams. I don't want or expect a response from you between 11 and 1 every day that you're working from home. Please take that lunch break as your time to feed your baby, play with your baby, put the baby down for a nap. It turns out a year later, that employee came back to the manager and said, I just want to thank you for being so flexible with me when I came back. I was actually going to leave the company, but when you treated me with such kindness and grace and flexibility, I knew I wanted to stay, and I was happy to have you as my manager, and I knew I was going to be supported. So I would say find whatever flexibility. If you have to think outside the box a little bit with your processes, do it if you can, because it's going to go a long way. I don't know if anyone here is familiar with the Mom Project. They're a great organization and they help place parents in jobs. They could be a great resource if you're looking for flexible gap support as well. But they're not paying me to say that, by the way. But they do a lot of thought leadership. And one of their reports from 2024 said that parents make excellent employees. 76% of them say that caregivers are high performers and they see a 72% ROI from supporting them because they're focused. Parent employees are empathetic, resilient, loyal, efficient, tenacious, because you kind of have to be when you're a parent. Those are all the things there. So in closing, I'll say that employees with a strong reboarding plan, research shows, are 3 times more likely to find their return to work easier than expected compared to those that don't have a formal plan. And they report an increased productivity of 67% and 87% sense of feeling valued. Obviously, you know, if someone's making the decision to grow a family and have children, it is one of the great milestones that they can have in their life. And Maya Angelou has said, you've probably heard this, I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So show up for your people during this stage, and it's really going to have a lasting impact. Hopefully some of the things that we're talking about today are sparking something in you. And if you want to continue the conversation, I would love to do that.
You made a great point, Ariana. It's about the way people make you feel. Obviously that sticks with you. And they also say that, people don't leave companies so much as they leave managers. So, if you flip that around and you're a positive, supportive manager that's giving your employee what they need at the time that they need it, then they're less likely to leave and, in fact, more likely to stay. And then when they do stay, they're more highly productive, they're more focused. And I would like to think that anybody right now who doesn't know that, who's in the workforce, isn't really paying attention. So that's my personal opinion. So for companies that are evaluating their effectiveness of their parental leave support, what do you suggest they do to start, kind of assessing and benchmarking where they are and where they might aspire to be?
Yeah, well, something we touched on earlier is, each manager may be doing something a little bit differently. So finding out all of the things that everybody's doing differently and similarly, and putting a formal plan in place. I would also suggest asking your parent employees that have taken leave while they're at your organization during their tenure. You can also ask any parents that were also working, even if they were at a different company at the time, what was helpful to them or what was not helpful, what was horrible. You can learn from those mistakes as well, even if they're not your own. So I would say even putting together some type of questionnaire, you can make it anonymous and asking people truly how they feel. You want to make sure that the questionnaire is formatted and really hitting on the things that are important for you. Happy to chat through that if you're thinking about doing that, by the way. And the other thing is just the raw data. Maybe go back and look at the last 18 to 24 months and look at your attrition. What has it been? And then look at the specific parental leave demographic within that attrition. And if that's significantly higher than the general number, if most of the people that left your organization had taken a leave in the last 12 to 18 months, that's probably a sign that there wasn't great communication from the beginning and they didn't feel supported. And you might want to do something about it.
Great. Well, if this is all resonating with you, Ariana said she's welcome to continue the conversation. If you have questions today, you can put them in the chat or in the Q&A window. Or if you have questions or thoughts that you want to follow up with upon reflection of today's conversation, Ariana is available for that as well.
All right. So a comment that came through says, not a question, but I just wanted to say thank you, Ariana, for the work you are doing for parents in the workplace. We need to spread your word.
Oh, thank you.
Excellent. So we'll give people a few more minutes to submit any questions that you might have for either Ariana or Rachel. In the meantime, I am just going to share a little bit more about the partnership that MP has with Shoshanna's daughter here. Unless there are any more questions that want to come through.
I'll ask a question if anyone's willing to respond. Does anyone have anyone on their teams currently that are planning for maternal leave or paternal leave that this will get you thinking about how to approach that? You could raise your hand or answer silently.
Alrighty here. Well, thank you, Ariana and Rachel. For a complimentary 30-minute call with Ariana, use the link provided in the chat right now. To go over any of your parental leave needs or any other questions that you might have for Ariana that you wanted to ask her in a private one-on-one consultation. Just as a note, MP clients have access to exclusive rates for service. So if you are booking time with Ariana, be sure to mention that you are an MP client, and she is very excited to work with each and every one of you. To learn more about MPHR's full service solutions for 2025 and more, you can visit our website at mp-hr.com. And if you would like to know more about Shoshanna's daughter, please visit www.shoshannasdaughter.com. Be sure to join MPHR for our upcoming webinar, Navigating Pay Transparency, Adapting to Evolving Requirements. You can visit our website to register and see the full calendar of upcoming events and available resources. Once again, we will be sending out a recording of today's webinar, and as well as any other resources that might be helpful from the presentation today. Thank you everybody for joining us, and have a terrific day.
Thank you.
Thank you.